This is the canopy from an Emmaljunga City Cross stroller, and today we're going to show you how to remove the rivets that hold the ribs of the internal mechanical part of the canopy in place, how to remove those ribs so that you could, for example, wash the canopy or treat it against mildew and so on, or in this case, because the whole canopy feels very loose and it doesn't stay up in place, and this means that the rivet itself has loosened. So what I'm going to do is remove the rivet, and then I'm going to replace it with a screw. What I am going to use today to remove the rivet is a Dremel that I'm going to use on the highest speed possible, and it has a cutting wheel on it. You can also remove rivets using a drill, in which case I recommend using a new drill bit. You can buy a new drill bit purely for the purpose of removing these rivets, because you don't want the rivets to have to spin around too much before they are removed. This will cause the plastic to be damaged underneath as the rivet heats up and melts down into the plastic. So, in this case though, I use a Dremel because that is the easiest way of not damaging the plastic at all. I'm going to set my speed as high as possible, and then I'm going to hold it more or less flat and move it against the rivet. And what I'm trying to do is sand down the rivet so that it splits where the external ring is connected to the shaft that goes through. You don't want to press too much or you'll break the cutting wheel, so you just kind of want to run it with a slight incline but more or less flat across the rivet, as like this. Now I've sanded off the ring and the washer loosened under it, and now I'm going to start removing the different components of the mechanism. And I just wanted to say that it's very greasy inside the mechanism, so you want to be careful not to transfer that grease to the inside of the canopy. It is also actually important to wash your hands before doing this and to lay out a clean work area. It's very easy to get grease on the inside of this canopy, and then it's hard to remove afterwards. You can use a flathead screwdriver to help pry off at the end. In this case, I've sanded it down very much. You want to be careful not to bend these ribs inside very much, as they can break. That may actually be another reason why you would be removing this mechanism, is if you need to replace some of these ribs. They do have a tendency to break. You should be aware that the top of the rivet now is still a bit bulbous, and it's going to have a little bit of trouble going through the hole in the ribs. What you can do is pull it tight and then use a hammer, or the back side, the fork side of a hammer, to help pull it through. In this case it's being difficult, so what I'm going to do is clip it here, and then I can remove the rest. Okay, I wiped down the two metal ends on the other side, and now I'm pulling the ribs through so I can complete this other side of the mechanism on the other side of the ribs, after I've safely removed the textiles, because these ones are more or less clean, and set them to the side. Now I'm going to repeat the same process on this side, and then I'll put the canopy back together. Okay, now I'm going to start rebuilding the ribs, the frame that goes through the canopy, and I have screws. So I'm going to take a screw and put it through here like this, and replace it onto the other side. There's a little indentation here in this ring, and that goes upwards onto the rib. And the washer, and then a nut. I'm going to tighten it up with my screw gun. You don't want to do it too tight. You want it tight, but not too tight. You'll know it's too tight if it starts to deform the plastic too much. A little bit of pressing in on the plastic is okay, but there, that'll be good. This can be adjusted afterwards to some extent. Maybe just one more. Okay, then I'm going to clip off the excess screw. I do everything with a standard size of screw. I find it easier to clip and sand afterwards, but if you find a screw of the right length beforehand, then you can avoid this step. Okay, now we're going to slide these ribs back through the canopy, and before we do this, we're going to put tape over the ends here. I've already wiped down the ribs, so the tape is not actually for cleanliness purposes, but rather because the ribs have some rough edges and they can catch on the inside of the fabric and make it kind of hard to pull it through. But if you tape over it and then remove the tape after you pulled it through, I find you kind of get a smooth movement. Now I've pulled the ribs back through their respective tunnels in the canopy, and the inside one, just wanted to point out that there's a little sleeve here that the rib has to go through. It can't go through just the larger tunnel, but there's an inner tunnel that's tighter. Now I'm going to remove the tape and I'm going to put the mechanism back on this side in the exact same way that I did on the other side. Okay, now I've put the last part back in place and tightened it and sanded it down. And for me, they feel tight enough, not too tight. If you're unsure, then you can put this onto your seat and test it. And you can, of course, always after adjust it or adjust it after the fact with a screwdriver. This repair is necessary if these are loose, or if any of these ribs break, or if you need to wash the canopy. So there are many different applications for this repair. And what you would need then to complete this repair is just a drill or a Dremel, and then a variety of screws and screwdrivers and so on and so forth. And just once again, a quick overview. You want to start by removing one side and then cleaning it up, and pulling the whole part through, removing the other side, putting it back together, and then putting the ribs back through, and then completing the last side again. So I hope that this has been helpful. As usual, please leave any questions or comments below.